Welcome to the Daily Space Weather. We see all kinds of data anomalies, solar activity kicking up, and a ton of stuff to cover. We're going to go deep into cosmology, so stay tuned. This should be an interesting episode, to say the least. Now, we see a bunch of activity there around the east portion of the solar limb there, part of the, just south of the equator there. We see former sunspot 2749. And there's some activity behind it too. Let's look at 304 angstroms. There's a 304 angstroms view. Also, another interesting thing, we captured yet another Earth-facing coronal mass ejection. So it's coming once again. And we've noticed it. Do you think NOAA noticed it? The last coronal mass ejection was not picked up by anybody except for this channel. Cheers. Anyway, we see some big filaments in the northwest also. And the North Pole coronal hole is still looking large. All right, let's look at some more data here. Here's the data from the Stereo A coronagraph. And that is another Earth-facing coronal mass ejection. We were actually covering it yesterday as it happened, as we filmed the show. As we filmed the show, we actually saw this plume coming out, and we suggested, in fact, go watch yesterday's video. We suggested that this might be actually a coronal mass ejection happening. And I don't know why. Oh, geez, get off. There we go. So there's that coronal mass ejection right there. You can kind of see it, hopefully. And part of the reason that we make these videos, folks, is so I can look at these on the big screen myself. That's part of the reason why we do the premiere process the way we do it. It's not because we think that we're more important than we really are. Anyway, yet another coronal mass ejection covered before anybody else covered it. And we've also got some anomalies in the NOAA data, and there's all kinds of weird stuff going on, folks. Now, here's the LASCO C2 image. And when that coronal mass ejection happened, you do indeed see a halo. Right there, you can see plasma coming out of both sides. So there is at least some Earth-facing component likely in that coronal mass ejection. Once again, let's look at the sun in X-rays. And here's the GOES X-ray imager. We do see a little uptick in X-ray activity there. There's a time and date stamps. All around the solar equator, it's all looking like 2024, cycle 24 activity. And still only a couple of B-class flares ever came out of that now plage region, formerly known as sunspot 2749. You can see the last day or so. A little bit of X-rays coming up over the equator yet, so there still is some activity happening there. We will look at the colorized magnetogram later if we have time. Here's a real-time solar wind. It looks like a second coronal hole wind stream might be just hitting now. We see the signature of what happened yesterday was exactly the kind of a signature you'd see with a weak and fleeting coronal hole wind stream. Density comes down, velocity goes up, and then eventually peters out. Well, it looks like the density's going back up again, folks. Anyway, phi angle is up at 339. We've got a pretty balanced field right now as we have a high BT, but the BZ is convergent on 0, and that's consistent with what we see on the Gong 2 and the magnetometer as we see a bit of a magnetic tug-of-war going on. Anyway, the solar wind density looks like it's fluctuating here between some significant numbers. Looks like it was up at about 25 for a brief moment there, and we do see a hit on the geomagnetosphere movies, the geospace magnetosphere movies, that is. Anyway, it looks like the solar wind density is currently just below 10. I'll say 7 protons per cubic centimeter. And the solar wind speed, somewhere around 400 kilometers per second. Pretty nominal. Here are the geospace magnetosphere movies. This is 4 hours of data. And we're going to actually take a look at the space weather modeling framework to kind of give you a little tutorial, show you how to actually look at it. And this isn't just based on the solar wind data, folks. This is based on ground-based magnetometers, space-based magnetometers. And there you see that density spike. Not really reflected in the velocity, except with the way it speeds up and slows down the local environment. Here's the density. And you can see everything turns dark blue there. That's an indication of a high density area. And that's that spike that we see. That did go off the scale for density. Anyway, back to the space weather modeling framework. This includes many, many different measurements of everything from the electron flux to all kinds of measurements of the magnetosphere and so on. Anyway, there's that density spike. As you can see, it was very fleeting as reflected in the solar wind data. Now let's scroll down and look at, I'll show you where to look at the space weather modeling framework, which this is based on. Just click on details down here. And then just click on space weather modeling framework. Then it's going to send you to a different site. And there's a ton of information here as to how these models are created. And there, I finally found it. If you click on the About header up here, click on About, and it'll tell you all about the space weather modeling framework. For instance, BATS are us is part of it. I have no idea what the acronym stands for, but this will give you practically everything, including possibly even the code used to make these calculations. And I'm not going to get in depth into this, as this video is already destined to be a little lengthy. And we're going to be talking cosmology by the end of the video, so stay tuned. But in the meantime, check out patreon.com/smAsho. Now, one of the things that we've been reporting on is the 10.7 centimeter radial flux was being reported by NOAA as having gone up to 79 all of a sudden. I'm going to have to get verification on that, as that doesn't sound right. Now, I drew this orange line in here just to show you where the 70 line is. That's 70 solar flux units, and the 10.7 centimeter radial flux, which is a measurement of the solar outer corona. And if this went all the way up to 79 for, I think it was about 12 hours, 12, 18 hours or so, it was being reported that this was at 79 all of a sudden. That would be a huge jump. We're going to have to see if we can get verification on that. If anybody's getting the NOAA alerts, you may have noticed that. I think it was probably just 69 as it went back down to 68. It's more likely that it went from 69 and back down to 68 than from 79 to 68. Anyway, the current number listed is 68 once again. And if you're wondering how the thermosphere is doing, well, it's cold. Quite cold. GOES magnetometer is showing the kind of sawtooth spiky patterns that we expected and forecasted it to show. And we are happy to see that the GOES 15 is back to sending data. Here's the Gong 2 stuff, and we see this magnetic tug-of-war going on. This is the kind of thing you would expect when you have a high BT and a convergent BZ, meaning that the field influence from both poles is similar on the total magnetic heliospheric current environment. I know it's too many words, folks, but we're going to need some new terminology to explain how some of this stuff works in the world of astrophysics. Shout out Eugene Bagashov. We got to do that recorded call soon. And we're going to see continued choppiness in the GOES magnetometer as that environment stays like that. We see some small perturbations here in the X-ray flux. Nothing approaching a B-class flare. KP index is at 2. Coming up from 1, where it was around midnight. I think the largest earthquake of the past 24 was a 5+ magnitude out here in the Aleutian Islands. near Little Sitkin Island. Now, it looks like a volcanic island. I have no idea whether it's active or not. Let's look at the rest of the earthquakes of the past 24. This one coming in about 20 hours ago. It's a 4.3 at Japan. And there's a 5.0 in mainland Alaska. Shout out Alaskan viewers. Please leave a comment. Let us know if you felt that quake. Oh, looks like it hit Anchorage. 5.0 out toward the Alaska range from Anchorage. Probably some population around there. Please leave a comment if you felt the quake. And if you didn't, leave a comment anyway. Eric Schmidt told me to tell you so. Next on the list is a 5.0 in Indonesia. And yeah, there it is, just directly north of Australia. 4.0 in Papua New Guinea, that one's at depth, about 187 kilometers. 4.3 at Costa Rica is next. That one coming in at 1952 UTC, around 8 p.m. Greenwich Mean Time. Here's a deep one in the Fiji region. That one's at 571 kilometers, a 4.7 magnitude. Here's the quake out in the Aleutians there near Little Sitkin Island. Looks like a volcanic island. Not sure if it's dormant. Who knows? Leave a comment if you know more about volcanoes than me. Here's a 4.6 in Indonesia. By the way, that Little Sitkin quake was deep. Is it magma moving around? Is it magma? Is it magma or is it Memorex? Here's a 4.7 in Vanuatu. That one is at 200 kilometers depth. And let's look at the pressure map. Now we're centered on McMurdo Station because this channel is cold as ice. We reside in Antarctica. Just kidding, folks. We list our location as Antarctica. Anyway, we see this anticyclone finally moving up toward northeastern Canada now. Shout out Neil Thompson. If you've got clear skies above head, I'll bet you do. And let's advance the pressure map for one day. Here, this is at windy.com, by the way, folks. They've got a great mobile app also. Highly recommended. Shout out windy.com. Let's start an official endorsement deal. There's where pressure systems will be in about 24 hours, at least from when we made this video. It's 4:23 a.m. Do you know where your pressure is? By the way, we've got a lovely image of M87's jet here as our kind of our bumper image. Like if I had to go to the bathroom in the middle of the taping of this. Fortunately, folks, it's not live. It's Memorex. Volcano rundown. The past day. This is actually for today, Saturday, October 5th. We see Etna, where activity is continuing at the summit. Please don't pole vault Mount Etna, no matter how much of an Olympian you might be. Mount Aso is being a real Aso and producing a 7,000-foot ash plume. Mount Manam back to exploding, producing a 10,000-foot ash plume. Dacono exploding, 6,000-foot plume there. Popocatépetl exploding, 21,000-foot plume there. Shout out if you're viewing from Mexico. Shout out if you're able to see these videos in Mexico City. Nevados de Ruiz looks like it dissipated. Ravenador exploding, producing a 15,000-foot plume. Sabancaya exploding, producing a 26,000-foot plume. Can you say emissions, folks? Can you say cloud nucleation? Copahu back to exploding, producing an 11,000-foot plume, and Nevados de Chilean similarly exploding, 13,000-foot plume there. Please do not do the Fosbury flop over Nevados de Chilean. It could be bad for your health. And we need every viewer as we are shadow banned and throttled beyond human belief. Please leave a comment, Eric Schmidt, if you view our space weather videos. Also Elon Musk. Anyway, we see a small global electric spike here at the same time that density spike came in. Welcome to Earth, folks. Welcome to the Neo-Renaissance. All your weather comes from space. Yes, Hall currents run the jet stream and yada, yada, yada. Let's go back to some data, some other data, that is. GOES electron flux is looking pretty relaxed here. Expecting this to be fairly nominal or moderate. And the relativistic electron flux is pretty high, actually. Despite that, we don't really see any charging hazards. And for that, we thank you. We like our satellites to not be having problems. Here's the ionosphere last 6 hours, and it is looking pretty normal. There's the latest image, we hope. That's 8:15 UT, and it's looking pretty normal there. Here's where stuff is in the solar system. There's where stuff will be on the 12th, 1 week from now. Milky Way galaxy team for the win. There's where stuff is above my head. Are you familiar with A Cygni, otherwise known as Cygnus X3, otherwise known as Deneb, the tail of the swan? Do you know where the lightning is striking right now? Well, here's a real-time lightning map. And shout out Minneapolis. There's a storm a-brewing out to your west. Now, if you look at lightningmaps.org, oh, it looks like a populated area, folks. Olivia Airport, there's thunder rolling in. Again, lightningmaps.org. Next time you hear thunder, check it out. It's good times. This is a very fast-moving system here. I was looking at this earlier on the radar. This thing is getting a sudden shove from behind. We'll look at it on the water vapor in a minute. And here's a close-up of that system there. Looks like Duluth. Duluth, be careful, because that storm is on the Luth. And there's a water vapor map. Let's animate that. I'm going to zoom in on that area. And sure enough, it is getting a push from some dry, massive air, as well as the jet stream. We got a bit of a heavy low pressure system here off the coast of Florida. You can see that. As well as some serious stormage there south of Cuba. Let's zoom in on that area. Western Minnesota. And there's a crazy convergence line going on there. I would not want to be flying a plane across this convergence zone right here. As if you're going east to west, you're going to hit a sudden wall of dense air, and then you're going to suddenly lose altitude as you fly out of the dense air. It's turbulence central right there, but check out the convergence going on there. Major Hall current streamers sticking out perpendicular to the flow of the water. And I'll tell you what, if you are around this system, go out and get an image of the sky, because you will see some funky cloud formations in those areas. Right in this area, it's going to be bone dry, and you'll have a clear sky above your head and a great view of what's going on out in the distance. Possibly taking the opportunity to, view things like sprites, high altitude lightning, pink elves, or whatever they're being called this time, Lightning that comes all the way from the mesosphere, folks. Are you familiar with that? Anyway, moving on. And here are the western jet streams. Some pretty powerful convergences there. Again, we just showed it on the water vapor map over the western U.S. Let's look at the eastern jets and move on. There's still a ton of stuff to cover, folks. We apologize if you're in a different part of the world. If you send us requests, we will consider covering funky weather wherever you are. Welcome to the That's Censored and That's a Sinkhole section. Do you know the distinction between your and a hole in the ground? Are you aware that Google's a scam and not a verb? And please stop using it as a verb, as it means to obtain biased search results using the Google Junkware search engine. Follow us on Instagram if you want to see some behind-the-scenes stuff, like our checklist, which still includes defang Google, smack Google in punishment, whittle Google down to an appropriate size, monitor Google to make sure Google does not try to mess up the internet a second time. Are you on Minds? Minds.com? Why not? Join us over there for some exclusive material. I mean, you'll see all kinds of stuff like our memes like this. Like, we encourage you to be ungoogleable. You may see the sun in multiple wavelengths. If you have epilepsy, please consider wearing sunglasses while viewing our videos. Minds.com, you won't be censored or shadow banned there. We're also on BitChute, as we're looking for every possible outlet for people to view our material, as we are just a tad on the shadow ban side. So please like and subscribe on YouTube and share the videos on your social media if humanly possible. Maybe become a Patreon. Let's talk about Sky Scholar, hosted by Doctor of Radiology Pierre-Marie Robitaille of Ohio State University's Department of Medicine Radiology Department. Let's talk about how the universe is a universe of light, not one made up of black holes and dark matter and dark energy. Let's play a random clip, and we did include the video underneath this video down there somewhere in the description. So click on that and watch the video. Here's a teaser. Do not copyright strike us for this, as we talk about cosmology every single day on our channel.
Of galaxy formation and the universe. Ignoring electromagnetism, the idea of dark matter persisted. And today, almost on a daily basis, humanity is confronted with claims of the presence of black holes throughout the universe.
Black holes everywhere, dark matter, dark energy. It's all math in search of observations, folks. And this is not the way science is done. Robitaille will expose all of the thermodynamic problems with a black hole, with gravitational collapse. And so please view the videos. As we say it practically every day, welcome to the Neo-Renaissance, folks, as cosmology, physics, and indeed astrophysics are being rewritten. We've been accused of exaggerating or using hyperbole, and we're not kidding.
And supermassive black holes at the center of each galaxy. In 1998, Michael Turner from the University of Chicago introduced the concept of dark energy.
Anyway, listen to what he's got to say as he's approaching the composition of the sun, which is the basis for all the rest of cosmology, from a radiological spectroscopy type perspective. We got demonetized yesterday because we showed a part of a trailer in little 2-second chunks about this movie that we are so watching today. I am so excited about this. It's not going to have aged well, folks. Check this out. 9 Lives, a movie featuring an all-star cast, including Jennifer Garner, Christopher Walken, and everybody's new favorite actor, Kevin Spacey, who plays a cat. He plays some sort of stuffy billionaire who, through a lightning bolt, has his consciousness transferred into a cat. Doesn't that sound brilliant? It's got a whole bunch of slapstick CGI comedic moments. It's got the woman who plays Larry David's wife on Curb Your Enthusiasm, whatever her name is, and the epic and classic Christopher Walken. And again, it features Kevin Spacey. Somehow I don't think this one has aged too well, folks. What are your thoughts? Kevin Spacey walking around wishing that was a young boy. Let's just say that. I don't think it counts as slander, folks. Anyway, like I said, I don't think 9 Lives will have aged particularly well. What do you think? We are renting this today. I don't care if it costs $20. We are renting this today. We will do a review, probably a longer review than the one we did of The Fanatic, featuring John Travolta as a maniac aspiring actor. Let's move on, and thanks Smash Team. Stay tuned for the bonus segments, as there are lots of them. Okay, let's talk about the physical characteristics of Deneb. Now, we have some problems measuring this thing, as we're looking right down something's z-field. And without getting too into it, as we talk about this thing all the time, Deneb is located at, now this one's saying 1,550 light years. Some estimates say as high as 4,300 light years distance. And we're going to show you a bunch of sort of perspective images of the galaxy in a moment. And we also left articles to the wiki article about Deneb. An interesting object in the solar and in the Milky Way galaxy, to say the least. And here's one of the images. Now this is from an intergalactic perspective, and we're looking at things like force lines here, potential force lines, the Virgo cluster, the Great Attractor, etc., looking at the Milky Way from well outside the galaxy. And I'm not suggesting that Deneb has any significant role in intergalactic cosmology. Now, here's an even farther zoomed out view. This is the 15 billion light years view, and you can see the intergalactic superweb there, where everything kind of looks like strings of pearls when you think of it. Now, if we scroll down here, we can see a bunch of different images, obviously, from different levels. Here's the Milky Way with respect to the local galaxies. Here's the 1 billion light year view. And then here's an image of the sun's location, where the Sagittarius arm is, and where the Cygnus arm is thought to be, and so on. And we've got links to all of these. These are not local files, folks, so we will include web links to all of these. Now here's a view from inside the Milky Way galaxy, and I've included this one to include the location of Deneb. Actually, Deneb's not in this one. This is only a 5. This is about a 25 light year. This is about a 25 light year plot here. And this is the ultra close stars. You can see Proxima Centauri and all of the local stars. And they're plotted out on a 3-dimensional plane here for your viewing convenience. Anyway, it's very difficult to get star maps that have Deneb plotted on the map, as again, there's a margin of error of like 300% in terms of determining where this object is located. Here's one map, and we've got links to this image also in the description. Somebody was kind enough to plot it there. I finally found it. It's underneath my pointer there. And you can see it's pretty jumbled up when you're viewing from a 5,000 light year diameter. This one is plotting it at about 2,800 light years or so, it looks like. So, as you can see, it's very difficult to plot the distance to an object which has got a z-field jet pointed right at you, especially if it's a crazy object like Deneb. Now, keep in mind, the Wolf-Rayet star, its solar wind is about 10 times the velocity and about 10 times the density of the sun's solar wind. And this thing's about 250 times the size of the sun or so, 200 to 300 times the diameter. And just to put that in perspective, this is just a rendition, like a scale rendition. This is the sun right next to Deneb. This is shown at 250 times the diameter of the sun. Now, if you look at the sun daily on our channel, that's how big Deneb would be. Kind of on the large side. Final bonus feature, looking at the sun in colorized magnetogram, we see that most of that activity that's rising, and it's all in a line there, folks. It's all in a line. It's like approaching the equator. Very solar minimum-ish activity there. Zoom in on these regions. And call it a day. We are out of here, folks. So thanks for tuning in, everybody. Thanks, patrons especially. Thanks, donors, subscribers, etc. Please don't forget to press like and subscribe, and to share on your social media if you enjoy the content. Share with your local astronomy club or perhaps your local physics nerd. And please, stare at the sun. Just use the proper instruments like the SDO or perhaps a solar filter. And when you're doing so, don't drink it. If you do, don't drive. Seriously, don't drive. And since it'll never be now again, may the solar wind be at your back and the atherosclerosis absent from your veins.